Three things. First, that began all of this is my objection, not merely a personal objection, I'm hoping, but my objection to the ponage attitude of the internet community. Second was a video that I made just today in response to DOS American Atheist, not a direct response, but more or less a response to him because I used his video, obviously. And then thirdly was one argument I made within the context of that video on the basis of what a strawman fallacy is. And so this led to a number of things, including a concession that needs to be made. And I try to make these when I see them. And I don't see many people doing it, but maybe that's just because I'm the only schmuck that screws up. At any rate, the reason I tease out these three things is to guide you along in case you haven't caught all these videos. Essentially what I want to talk about is this. A strawman fallacy, I've joked about this in the past, that people just throw this term around loosely. And my objection to it essentially is now been sort of, is come to the surface finally for me, and I'm able to sort of log this away. And this is what I'm logging. The concern, possibly, is whether or not a strawman fallacy is always an equivocation fallacy. If these are the same sort of thing. Now, an equivocation fallacy, unless I still have a bone in my head about this, is simply to prevaricate. It is to have a single utterance or symbol in the human language to represent two mutually exclusive definitions within the context of a single conversation. There's a mouthful. Essentially, it's saying, in the case of this William Lane Craig stuff, is the word existence, or to exist, the verb, I suppose, to exist, and no, not even that. No, it's thing. Sorry. It's the thing existing. Whether or not it is an ontological phenomenon or an epistemological phenomenon. And that becomes the crux of lots of problems in that argument, and precisely the reason why I disagreed with the argument from the beginning, and therein agreed with James's argument. That being said, and I want to sort of tease this apart from the argument or the video I made in response to James, because the thrust of that video was the intellectual dishonesty accusation, and all people have in response to me is that I am that the strawman fallacy was actually being committed when I said it wasn't. So I'm good with that. I concede that, and I want to explain this to people who might have a similar misunderstanding as I did. But that being said, truly, the thrust of that was the intellectual honesty bit. But I'll leave people to judge me any way that you want. That's how it goes anyway. Here's what I want to talk about. When we have equivocation, does an equivocation always lead to a straw man? Does a straw man always lead to an equivocation? Or can it be that both of these concepts could exist with the sort of mutual exclusivity? Equivocation, as far as I understand anyway, is to prevaricate, which means to use a single utterance and imply two mutually exclusive definitions within the context of a conversation. Okay? And so we ask ourselves, well, okay, if that is an equivocation, is that always a straw man? And the answer is no. We can equivocate, or prevaricate is the word I learned for it, by simply using pronouns when very easily with pronouns. In fact, this is a big problem with people in text comments that I see anyway. It's when people use words like it, or that, or this, or they, or these kinds of words, or even personal pronouns like him, she, her, whatever. We're using words that may be representing a number of different definitions. And certainly it doesn't have to be just pronouns. In this case, it was the word thing being equivocating or prevaricating between an ontological event and an epistemological event or phenomenon. And when people were talking to me in text comments, and they were saying things like, well, it's just a concept, that wasn't clicking with me, and I have to apologize for that. It wasn't. The word that really sort of like stroked me the right way was epistemological construct. And I was able to put that together in response to a video that someone sent me to. A very well done video that addressed precisely the same clip that James was responding to. However, the other individual did a much better job in it. I'm still sticking by that argument. Anyway, so the other question then would be, is a straw man always a prevarication or an equivocation? No, again. One example would be, say, like this Obama stuff about how Obama is a socialist. Well, if he's not a socialist, or if he's just stupid, maybe. I mean, I have my problems with the welfare state, but say that someone is saying that he's a Marxist and then goes on about how Marxism is terrible. That would be a straw man that isn't equivocating anything or isn't prevaricating anything. It's just fucking wrong, you see. However, can it exist that an equivocation can lead to a straw man? Well, certainly. And that was the case here. In William Lane Craig's video, the part that I missed, and the reason I'm conceding now that it is a straw man, is because he begins, the first statement actually that he makes is the straw man, and everything else he says assumes something else. And the difficulty I have when trying to mull over poor arguments is that I get lost in it, and I don't know what to say. I just go blind, my mind goes blank, and I can't process it anymore. So I'm going to try my damnedest to keep my head above water, because this is important. The straw man fallacy, that's the important part. This is the concession. The straw man fallacy is in that William Lane Craig says that people on YouTube, etc., believe that no thing ever began to exist, with thing being the key word. Okay? In this situation, and what we can assume from his argument there on out, is an equivocation between an ontological event and an epistemological event. That is to say that we recognize a computer distinct from a cell phone, distinct from anything, is only the result of an epistemological affair that's going on there. And that's the reason I agreed with James in the first place, and he made that argument fine. And I've stood by that from the beginning. The problem then, however, is that he somehow says all that, while at the same time stating precisely what any materialist person would say. That is to say, he says, well, look, all these things began to exist, while, of course, their physical makeup was always there and existed in many different forms. And without considering that absolute first statement, I was setting myself up for a large mistake on my part. All that I can say in addition to that is just that Craig, or even Kalam arguers, need to somehow give an ontological basis for epistemological events, which is really not maybe possible. It could be. I mean, to say that, like, what is it that makes a pencil a pencil? Why does that emerge? And not even think of a non-human something or other. Why is it that this particular arrangement results in such and such a physical phenomenon? In that, there may be room for saying that there's lawfulness, and that's kind of the argument that I've made in the past, but I'm way digressing at this point, so I apologize. The important part is the concession. I do see the straw man now. Equivocations are not always necessarily straw men, nor vice versa, and I still want James to explain to me why William Lane Craig is being intellectually dishonest. I mean, you guys could say all you want, like, well, he knows, but that's not evidence. And for you people who go on so much about just waiting for the evidence, here's an opportunity where I get to say it to you. That's the thrust of that video. I don't want people to lose track of that. That's a huge accusation without any evidence. Was it a straw man? I see it now. Yes, it was. But the rest of it, it's still staring you right in the face.